Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So grab a notebook to build your TBR and let's get to today's episode of Kid Lit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Kathy MacMillan and Manuela Bernardi, the authors behind She Spoke, 14 Women Who Raised Their Voices and Changed the World, and She Spoke Too, 14 More Women Who Raised Their Voices and Changed the World. These books are both a celebration and a call to action and feature 28 actual, literal voices of women making change in addition to the narrative inside. Reading it, listening to it, it honestly gave me goosebumps hearing those voices, and I am thrilled to talk with both of them today. So let's get to it. Kathy, Manuela, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So before we get to your two books we're going to talk about, I would like to talk about the two of you and get your backstories into children's literature and eventually how the two of you teamed up for this collaboration. So Kathy, do you want to start and tell us a bit about your backstory as an author?
Sure. So my background is as a librarian, and then later I became a nationally certified American Sign Language interpreter. My first book came out in 2005, and I've had several books that are resource books for librarians and teachers and parents, often having to do with early literacy, story time, and signing with young children. I also write young adult fantasy and nonfiction and picture books and board books, a little bit of everything. And I have about 24 books in print at this point, and my next book comes out next week, which is very exciting. But the most exciting thing has been working with my good friend Manuela on the She Spoke book.
Manuela, you want to tell us a bit about you?
Hi, I'm Manuela Bernardi. I'm a Brazilian screenwriter. Kathy and I have been friends for a long time, and we are going to explain that, but I'm a screenwriter, a writer. I have a Fulbright scholarship, which Kathy says is very impressive.
Yes.
You always have to mention that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she told me always to mention that. I studied writing for screen and television at USC. And ever since I've been working here in Brazil as a screenwriter, I wrote for Globo, I wrote for HBO. I have a movie that came out on Netflix on 2023, I think. And it was in the top 10 for a while here in Brazil. It's been very exciting.
Give us the title so we could go search for it if we wanted to.
You cannot search for it in the United States because it only came out in Brazil and Latin America and Portugal. But it's called No Ritmo da Fé. You can find it on IMDb, and it's probably online somewhere without subtitles. And lately I've been going down a path of like teaching workshops and finding a community of writers. It's been tough to be a writer in Brazil, and I think everywhere. And we need to stick together and find our voices. So,
yeah.
This is what our book is about.
Yeah. And it is. It's finding your people. It's finding others who have done hard things before you and can inspire you, that you could stand on their shoulders, that you can feel proud about, and then also inspired by. There's so much love and emotion, I think, at least when I, as a woman, read this book, I was like, yes. As I kept reading it. So tell me about the collaboration. How did the two of you come together in the children's literature space so that you could write these books?
So we first met back in the early 2000s on a fan fiction website. And this was a fan fiction website where younger writers were paired with older writers who were a mentor and could give you feedback. And I happened to be paired with Manuela when she was like 16 years old as her mentor.
15,
She
yeah.
was, yeah, she was an incredible writer even then in English, which was her second language.
She taught me English, basically.
I did not teach you.
How
You
to
were
write in English.
I just
Just write
helped.
like fiction in English.
Yeah. Well, we also collaborated on several stories, and this was all, I was in Baltimore, Maryland. She was in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So this was all via email and instant messenger, and we had never met in person. And then about 10 years later, after she had finished college, she looked me up on social media and found me again. And I was in the middle of edits for a young adult novel, and I was really despairing. So she became my critique partner. My second novel is actually dedicated to Manuela because she was such a great help. And she actually flew here and stayed with me for a week during the launch of my first novel, which was amazing. That was actually, I think, the second time we met in person because
Yeah.
I believe, because
The
the
first
first
time
time,
we met was when I flew to study in the United States. When I
yeah. So
stopped
we
back
we
home.
made a
Yeah.
chance. We made a point to meet in person. So we met in person like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. You visited me in Los Angeles?
Yes, I did. That's right.
Yeah.
So then the way the book happened is that I had done um, a, a board book series for Familius Press, which is the publisher of the She Spoke books. And that series is called Little Hand Signing. It's about signing with young children. And the creative director at the time was a man named David Miles. And he had this really cool idea for a book that uses the audio panel format that is usually used for, press the button and hear the donkey go hee haw, but instead to use it with recordings of women's voices. And he needed somebody to write it. And he happened to know I was a librarian with a research background. So he said, "Hey, would you be interested?" And I said, "Yes." Now, normally for an illustrated book like this, the publishing process is a really long one. Normally, the writer writes it, and then it goes to an illustrator, and it might take a year or 2 years for the illustrator to illustrate it. At the time that David pitched the idea to me, it was, I believe, April or May of 2018. And the goal was for the book to come out in March of 2019 for Women's History Month. So it was like a really short turnaround. And in
Yeah.
order to do that, you have to have some of the illustrations done by like September so it can go in the catalog so they can advertise. So it was a really abbreviated timeline. So I said, "I'd love to do this. Can I have a co-author?" And they said, "Yes. Do you have anyone in mind?" I said, "How about this award-winning screenwriter from Brazil?" So I pitched Manuela as my co-author, and they thought that was a great idea. So we dived in and started working on it.
And it was a really great process because Kathy and I, we've always had a friendship in which we just get philosophical. We start talking about the conditions of being a woman and being like writers and what we want to say. So it felt like a great fit, It felt like it felt right.
Absolutely. And I think we also kind of knew how to work together from a distance because we had done that writing fan fiction. So um, we did we did a really good job splitting up the initial writing. We knew what the format was going to be. That helped. That was kind of given to us by the publisher. And the first thing that we had to do when we were researching the She Spoke books was find the audio clips. And a lot of people think, oh, you just pick the women and then you go find the audio clips, right? Not so easy. It takes a lot of work because they have to be a certain length, like 25 to 30 seconds. They have to be in English. They have to be something that you can get the rights to, which is a whole other thing. And they have to be compelling and they have to be related to what
Yeah.
that woman is known for. Like you can't have Greta Thunberg talking about what she had for breakfast. It has to be something about the environment, right?
Although it was very compelling.
Yes.
Anyway.
So it took a long time. I would say that in the time it takes to write these books, probably 90% of it is searching the audio clips before we even get to the writing. So then, we split up the writing and we each kind of did deep research in 7 of the women. And then one of my favorite things is actually how we edited it. Do you want to talk about that, Manuela? in our
No,
process.
it's amazing because already have practice going all into each other's business when it comes to writing. We already dig into each other's writing ever since she started out by being my beta reader when I was 15, and then I edited her book. So we have no problem talking about like this sucks. Like, can we just find a way to
Right.
make this work? And then we would work together, get on Zoom, and just read through everything and go like, this sentence is not working. What can we do about it? What can we do this? Can we do this? And just brainstorm until we hit on what's right. And it always felt like, yeah, that's it.
That's it. Yeah. And now when I was actually rereading the book right before this, just
It's
to
our
kind of remind
brainchild
myself,
together. Yeah.
and I can't remember what you wrote and what I wrote. I mean,
Yeah.
it's us together. It really is. And one of my favorite things about the book, I know we've gone into talking about the books now, but
Beautiful.
one of my favorite,
You're just going exactly where I hope to
just
go. So
transitioning.
keep going.
Excited about them.
Okay. Well, for each profile, there is a portrait. There is a little narrative, about 200 words about that woman's life. There's a section that talks about the quote that you can hear from pressing the button, and when she said it, why she said it, where she said it, what's the context. And then there's a section called Your Turn to Speak Up, where it's 2 or 3 discussion questions related to that person. And this was one of my favorite parts about the book. I think it really makes it valuable for parents, for teachers, to really help kids to connect that person's life to their own lives. And I think we had a lot of fun coming up with it. We also used those discussion questions as a way to sneak in extra information that we didn't have room for in the main narrative. But I really enjoyed our discussions about those discussion questions and how exactly are we going to word them? What are we going for with that? And I think we came up with some really compelling ones.
You
Yeah,
did.
I feel like we have a theme going on with these books. In the first one, we already had a seed of it, and we have it even harder in the second one, which is like, as a woman, you're not going to be heard, and you have to be persistent, and you're going to fail, and you have to be okay with failing, and you have to look around you and find someone who's going to lift you up. I feel like we even talked about how we should do a book like about the women who inspired other women, and how this wouldn't be possible without the women that came before them, and how we need to stick together. We're not going to be heard by ourselves. There's no way around it.
Yeah. And the thing is, men also have this. Men
Yeah.
have, mentors who raise them up and their wives who did all the housework so they could spend all their time doing
Yeah.
art or whatever, but it's not acknowledged, right? It's just assumed, oh, that man achieved because of his own merit. But no, he had all these systems in place. When it comes to women, we do acknowledge it more because women don't have all these other systems in place. So the one that always leaps to my mind is Dr. Jane Goodall, who had the opportunity to go study in Tanzania, but they wouldn't let her on the reserve by herself as an unmarried woman. So her mother went with her. Her mother just, uprooted herself and went and said, I will be there and I will support you, which is incredible,
Yeah.
right? So yeah.
Yeah, I heard the other day, and I can't remember where I have heard it, but I love listening to podcasts, and so I'm sure it was on a podcast the other day, and they were talking about women coming together, finding your community, helping to inspire. And someone had made the analogy of like lighting a candle. When your candle is lit and you reach out to light the candle of someone else, it doesn't dim yours, it stays
Right.
the same, and then collectively we all just start to think and act and shine and grow in different ways. And I thought, what a
Yeah.
beautiful analogy that really does remind me of your book, because it's all these women who are doing their thing that is a hard thing, and they're not, it's not like they're being celebrated every step of the way as they're doing it, but we have this collection where if you don't feel that love, that support, that inspiration in your own life, you could go to the pages of your book and
Yeah.
just kind of soak it in that way to help you feel less alone, to help you feel supported, even if your real life, isn't. I think that is such an important thing, that page after page of your books, I was getting jazzed up. Like, Yes, the energy level was rising in me to see this. And I think part of it was because I'm so glad you mentioned it, that your turn, it just makes you think instantly, oh, I could join her. I could think about this too, along with whatever the thing is for me. Not to mention they're really good discussion questions for the dinner table, which I may have brought up in some of my teenagers, which was wonderful. So
I love that.
yeah, and I do want to highlight the format again. I really want to make sure people can picture this book in their mind, the actual book. So if you were to hold the book, listeners, it's a little bit bigger, I would say. It's the size is a little different, but it's a book you can hold in your hand. It has this beautiful, thicker, little bit almost padded kind of cover. So it is this sturdy thing that you can just take anywhere. But that panel, the goosebump giving panel on the right for each of these books, those 14 clips with those little circular buttons with those beautiful portraits. And we'll talk about, at least mention the illustrators later, because my goodness, the books are beautiful. And to be able to just read about the person and then push the button and hear that woman's voice. I had goosebumps. It's just such a beautiful pairing. And I know the book would stand out and be wonderful without it, but with this multimodal experience, you can't help but just soak it in. So I'm sorry the clips took you a while, but man, do they add
I'm
to
glad they were worth it.
they were worth
Oh,
it.
and
One
when
thing
we
that's
were looking for them, we got to hear so many other wonderful clips. So it was very inspiring all along.
Right.
Even
This is
if
true.
we couldn't use them, there were some that we fought hard to be able to use and we couldn't use. But it's
Yeah.
we
One of the things that I really love that I didn't anticipate before the first book came out, the it's geared to ages 8 to 12. That's what the reading level is for. But so many younger kids and even older kids and adults really connect with this book because of the audio panels. And the first time someone posted a video of their 4-year-old son reciting the Abby Wambach quote from She Spoke, that was just amazing.
Oh,
And so it's not just little girls, it's little boys too, but like
that's
these
right.
are voices. The voices of women are not heard as much as the voices of men. And especially some of these older ones like Mary McLeod Bethune in the first book, Mother Jones in the second book. These are voices that you're not necessarily familiar with, but for young children to be able to press that button and hear it over and over again and have those voices and those words kind of go into their soul is just, it's a great opportunity, and I'm really glad that we were able to do it.
So, how did you choose? I know part of your process was what audio clips could you get access to, but then how did you narrow it down to 14 in the first book, and then thankfully 14 more in the second book? How did you make those choices?
Oh, it was so hard. In the first one, we had a criteria in which we wanted to have women from all walks of life,
Mm-hmm.
as many professions and causes as possible. It had to be in English. And they should be like a mix of women we know about and women we should know about. Because when it comes to women, there are so many that should be known, but they just get forgotten by history. So we wanted to bring those back to the surface. And when it came to the second one, we worked really hard to put in more international women.
Yeah.
And well, I'm not American, so well, I'm South American. I am American. But I'm not from the United States. And I feel like it's way harder to get international women because they need to speak in English and it needs to be like easy to understand, and it should be in a place where we can get like access to the voice. It should be in the public domain. And when it's international, it's harder for it to be in the public domain in the United States. But we worked really hard to get international women because we feel like it's a problem all around the world, and it's something that women in other countries can be even more inspiring because sometimes it's even harder for them.
Right.
So we worked
Absolutely.
really hard on that.
We also had luck with various organizations who helped
Yes.
us get access. For example, we have Maria Ressa in here, who is the founder of Rappler. which is a media organization in the
And
Philippines.
a Nobel Prize winner.
And a Nobel Prize winner, that's right. And so we were able to find a clip from an interview she had done on Rappler,
Yeah.
which she is the owner of. So Rappler and Maria Ressa helped us, by giving us permission to use that. Similarly, the California Community Foundation helped us with getting the clip for Antonio Hernandez. So, we were able to reach out. For the first book, many of the clips came from commencement speeches at Barnard College, and the staff at Barnard College were immensely helpful in helping us get the rights for those. So, it took a lot of back and forth. Sometimes it took being very persistent. But yeah, when it came down to figuring out who was going to go in and who wasn't, we kind of had to look at it as a whole. Look at what kind of diversity do we have in here. We don't want to have 12 educators. We want to have some environmentalists, some educators, some politicians. It often does kind of skew heavily to politicians because that's whose voices are recorded and in the public domain. So we do have several politicians in there from various countries, but we wanted to make sure that we had writers, that we had activists of different kinds. So we just wanted to have a real variety.
And that is quite evident. And I like to pride myself on someone who keeps track of the world and who knows what's going on and who reads a whole lot of books so that I can learn about a lot of people. And I didn't know some of these people in the book, some of these amazing women. So I feel like no matter who you are or how much you think there's something in here where you're just going to be impressed. You're going to learn something new and really feel the contributions that people we didn't even know about existed. And then, of course, that makes me think, about the millions of other women doing their thing that aren't in this book, but they do it anyway, right? And so can we. That I think what was said in the book was so powerful, but then by default, what was left unsaid because you can't possibly fit it into the book. I feel like you honored that space too with how you brought the stories that you did choose here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Do you want to play one of the clips to give listeners a sense of what they might hear if they were to push one of those wonderful magic buttons?
I
it's
would
hard
love
to
to
choose.
play Judy Heumann, who is my personal hero. So Judy Heumann was a disability rights activist. This actually speaks to another challenge we had, the long publishing process. From the time we finished the book, and on the second book, it was a more of the normal process, not the compressed process. But from the time we finished writing the book until the book came out, it was a year and a half, something like that.
Something like
and
that. Yeah.
the problem was people kept dying. Judy Heumann died, Gerda Weissman Klein died, so we kept having to go back, and Jacinda Ardern stepped down as prime minister, so we had to keep going back and revising things. But Judy Heumann was a pioneering disability rights activist. She passed away in 2023, and she led the very famous protests in 1977 to make sure that the enforcement rules for the disability rights were enforced. And she led a protest. They took more than 150 people, most of them with disabilities, peacefully took over the Health and Welfare Office in San Francisco for 26 days, and basically forced the head of Health and Human, or what is it? Health Education and Welfare, sorry, to sign these regulations. And these were regulations for a law that had been passed 4 years earlier, but it hadn't been enforced yet. Anyway, Judy Heumann's work was instrumental in the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. She served in many functions advocating for disability rights all over the world. If you want to learn more about her, check out the movie Crip Camp on Netflix, which is all about the disability rights movement, and she features heavily in that film, and it's an amazing film. But Judy is amazing. Like, she was probably one of the bravest people I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, this clip that we have from her is from a 2020 interview with a podcast called ADA Live. And this really sums up her stance on disability. So let me see, I got to share the clip with you. And here we go. This is Judy Human.
I think it is imperative that we own disability as a part of who we are, and that in owning it, that we can speak up and out about it so that we're not alone.
Well, that just captures a whole lot, doesn't it? That one line. And then there's 27 more, right? Did I get the numbers right across the books? I'm like, wait a minute, I read. I don't do a lot of math. Did I get that right? Thank you for playing that. It really is such a beautiful addition to the book to hear those own voices. Now, I do want to mention also the illustrators and the illustrations. Both of these books have these beautiful, bold, colorful representations, and I feel like they just brought the words and that audio to life. I really enjoyed just paging through it and then paging through it again and looking at the unique way that they were captured. I know you said, it was a little bit different in that you had to have some of them up and ready to go and some of them not, but how does that process, or how did that process work and really bringing three things to life in this book: the illustrations, the text, and the audio clips?
Well, like I said, we had kind of an abbreviated schedule for the first one. And so basically the way it worked is we got on finding the clips and identified the first 6 clips. So we had 6 women identified within a month of starting on the book. And then we were able to at least tell the illustrator, okay, do portraits of these 6 women, because we didn't have to have it written yet. They just knew what we were, because we all knew the format. So Catherine Onesta was the illustrator on the first book. And then as soon as we finished getting the clips and identifying, we got her the names and she kept going on that. And one of the things I love about these books is that they really are international. Like we said, Manuela's in Brazil, I'm in the US. Catherine Onesta, who illustrated the first book, is from Indonesia. And then Becky Thorns, who illustrated the second book, was in England. So we really had it completely international working here.
Yeah. And you can feel it in the pages and the colors and the representation of them. They're beautiful. So I thank you for mentioning them by name. I wanted to make sure I threw in some credit in there.
Absolutely. They did a fantastic job, both of them.
Now, I probably should have asked you this before we hit record to see if I can ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And you could tell me one way or another, but we've got She Spoke. We've got She Spoke too. Are there plans for a She Spoke again the next time? I don't know what it would be, but I feel like this collection shouldn't end.
We've talked about potentially, because we do have more clips that we haven't used yet.
We agree with you.
Yes.
Yes.
We've also talked about the possibility of doing a They Spoke, because as we've gone through these, I mean, we have some amazing clips from people who aren't male or female. So it might be nice to do a collection where it has male, female, and non-binary people. So yeah, it's just all a matter of the bandwidth and can we do it and will the publisher take it? So
I'm going to put some like wishful vibes out into the universe for a book like that, because everybody deserves to have a book like this that could speak to them. Yep. Okay. I'm putting it out there. Now, beyond that, do either one of you have any plans for what's coming next? Kathy, I know you mentioned a book literally coming out quite soon.
Next week, February 4th. It's called Nita's Food Signs. So this is the third book in that board book series that I mentioned called Little Hand Signing. The first book is called Nita's Food Signs. The second book, Nita's Day, came out in 2020. And then the third book in the series is Nita's Food Signs, illustrated by Ekaterina Ladatko, and it comes out February 4th. You can find more information on my website at kathymacmillan.com. And these books are really cool because they are board book stories about a signing family, and the pages slide open so that you can learn the signs as well. And each book features.
I've just seen that. That is the coolest thing.
Well, you can go to my website and you can see a video. I have a I have plans. We're going to do video story times in American Sign Language and English on my website on February 4th, the day of, so you can see it. But yeah, this is another series that was designed by David Miles, who is very good at designing books in a way that use really cool formats without it being a gimmick. And this series has been a lot of fun. So there's going to be at least one more in this series, but this one is the newest one, Nita's Food Signs. And as far as what else is out there, I have a middle grade novel on submission right now about an 11-year-old deaf girl who learns the secret language of fairies, which is a magical sign language. We'll see what happens with that. And I'm currently working on a young adult trilogy, a fantasy trilogy, which is a retelling of Cinderella from the younger stepsister's point of view.
Which is awesome. I want to read it, and she has not sent it to me yet.
It's not in a state to be seen by anyone yet, but you'll be the first one, I promise.
Manuela, do you have anything you want to give us a hint about?
Well, I am a screenwriter, so we work in a lot of stuff that we cannot talk about under contract. So I have a few of those. I'm working on a show Bible for something. I'm working on a few projects. I'm also starting to, here in Brazil, I'm starting giving workshops and programs to help people without a lot of money, because here in Brazil, screenwriting is something for the elites. You have to have a lot of money because you cannot make so much money being a screenwriter, and you have to not get paid for a long time. So it's really hard to get access to resources when you don't have a lot of money. So I'm doing a program to help people write. There's a lot of screenwriters who have never written a screenplay. So I'm trying to help them get to that finish line. And I'm going to translate that into English soon. So maybe if people can follow me, and I'm going to talk about it. But my Instagram is in Portuguese, so you get to learn a new language.
I did see that. I thought, oh no. Okay. I love what you're doing though. We started earlier by saying, or I started by giving that candle analogy and lighting someone else's candle, and that's what you're doing. You're embodying the book. Both of you are embodying the book by telling stories for others. Well, I will definitely put links to your websites and social media handles in the notes so people can find you. So do you want to just really quickly mention them for listeners, and I'll collect them for the notes?
Sure. So first off, if you want to find more about the She Spoke books, you can go to tinyurl.com/shespoke. That's kind of the headquarters. It takes you to a page on my website, but makes it easier to find She Spoke. You can find all the information about both books, where you can order them. You can find links to all kinds of teacher resources, interviews. We have some word searches with all the women from the book.
We have information about other women who are awesome and couldn't be in the book.
And more audio clips
Search
that you
more,
can see. My website is at kathymacmillan.com, or one that's easier to spell is storiesbyhand.com. They both go to my website. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Kathy's_quill.
Okay, got that. Manuela, how about you?
You can find me on Instagram at manu.a.bernardi. No, underscore. It's Manu_A_Bernardi. And I have bought the domain, but I do not have a website yet, but it's manuelabernardi.com.
Okay. We will stalk your Instagram for updates.
In Portuguese.
Yes, if we can figure them out, we'll know that. Well, I will collect all of the links that you said, and I will make sure they go into the show notes along with direct links to both the books, to all the places they can get their hands on them, typically Amazon and Bookshop, depending on what is easier for them. Thank you both for coming on today. First, for writing such powerful, beautiful, emotional, let's do it kind of books for people to read. And then for coming onto the podcast to chat about it. I loved meeting you both, and I'm so grateful that you spent your time with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Stephanie.
You're welcome. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.